Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome to this Product People event. Before we start, a quick reminder our events are streamed on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. All talks are recorded and saved on YouTube, so feel free to check out any sessions you might have missed. Today's session is about product management in a SaaS scale up and will be presented by Stewart Foxall, CPO at Kuberno. And before I hand it over to Stuart, let me briefly introduce myself and Product People. So, my name is Ahmed. I am an Associate Product Manager Consultant at Product People and your host today. I have a background in computer science, product development, and product management across different industries in both B2B and B2C areas. And for those who don't know us, Product People provide interim product management and product leadership through our 40 product managers. We also run one of the largest PM communities in Europe with more than 60,000 members, and this is how we give back to the community. And before I hand it over to our speaker, we would love to get to know you a little better. Please go to our Slido link and answer this short question. You can simply scan the QR code on the screen or visit slido.com and enter the code 3072148 to join. So this will help us better understand your perspective. I will give you a couple of seconds to join. And as you are joining, maybe I can read the question for you. So, as your company scales, what part of product management tends to become the biggest bottleneck first? A. Making clear product decisions. B. Keeping discovery close to customers. C. Aligning teams around priorities. And last one, delivering consistently without slowing down. I will give you a couple of seconds to answer. And please keep in mind that there isn't really a right or wrong answer here. We are just curious to see what this group thinks. And while waiting for your answer, if I had to choose one, I would probably go with C, aligning teams around priorities. Because in my experience, as a company grows, the number of teams, stakeholders, and ideas also grows as well. And everyone is busy, but not always working toward the same goal. So when alignment becomes difficult, decision making slows down, delivery slows down, and even good discovery can lose its impact. So for me, alignment is usually the first bottleneck. But I am really interested to see if you agree or if your experience has been different. Let's wait for the results. And yes, for now, we have a 50% of B and 50% of C. Okay, we have equality here. And great. And I think without further ado, I am happy to welcome Stewart Foxall. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we are so excited to have you as our speaker today. So we'd like to hear a bit about you. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, lovely to meet everybody and a pleasure to be here. My name's Stewart Foxall, Chief Product Officer for Kuberno. I've had a range of experience with SMEs and scale-up businesses around a range of roles, which I'll get into as part of my presentation as well. So yeah, as I say, really happy to be here and talk to everybody. So with that, I will share my screen, Amit, and get started.
Yep.
So hopefully, if I can share my screen, okay, you can see my slide deck here. So really what I want to get across today in the talk is the powers that product has for a scale up versus the things it can't really control, and being honest about those things that it can't really control. So how did I get into product? Well, I did it the long way around. So I had a range of different roles in smaller SMEs and startup type organizations, starting with things like an operations director, where I was very responsible for things like support or for things like project management or audit requirements. but also responsible for delivering on the promises that were made by other teams and making sure that we can actually deliver those. More recently, I've been Chief Commercial Officer, responsible for hitting a sales target, going into new markets, being responsible for making sure that we deliver to the targets set out by the board. And then I think across a thread of all of those things is Chief Product Officer. And why Chief Product Officer? Because throughout every role I've been, product and delivering the right product to solve customer problems has always been in the heart of what I've looked to do. And I'll be honest, as Chief Commercial Officer, I made promises, and I love being in the position to be the individual that ensures those promises are delivered, are the right ones, and that I think is a key part of the role. So what are the different bottlenecks that were discussed within our poll? So I think we said B and C were there, but for me, delivering consistently started off with a spreadsheet. It started off with a spreadsheet when you're very small and there's only one of you and you're dancing between different priorities and different individuals. It's just a case of mixing delivery, customer conversations, fast moving, and trying to get to a regular cadence whereby you can give consistent delivery to the organization. Then as you grow a little bit larger, you can start trying to align the teams around priorities, and there's lots of ways of doing this. Some of it is software tooling, different roadmaps, often a lot of talking to people on a one-to-one basis and trying to buy them in to the overall vision that you're trying to take forward. Keeping discovery close to customers and making sure that things are delivered in a consistent way by listening to those customer demands on a consistent basis and making sure that you're doing the right things. But I really want to challenge one of the presuppositions, and that is making clear product decisions. And my argument is going to be that this stage never really quite resolves itself. So in my experience, product doesn't really decide. It doesn't really have the control over making the decisions as to what you do. And particularly in scale-up environments, often the strategy exclusively will come from the founders and the board, and product's job is really to make that strategy deliverable, to ensure that you're measuring the success of that strategy, and ensuring that the products that you deliver ensure that strategy survives contact with the real world. So that's my claim, and I will try and convince you of it throughout the rest of this presentation. So what are the forces that impact product, particularly in a scale-up? So growth, and this one is probably the one where it is positioned not correctly in my view. And what do I mean by that? Growth is always seen as the team which is making promises beyond the scope which is actually within the roadmap, and thus then product and operations and everybody else having to kind of make those promises be delivered. But I think that just comes with the territory and is very often necessary. It's necessary to hit revenue targets, to ensure cash flow, to ensure that the growth of the company and its revenues are such to power the product development that you need to do. And there's a balance to be struck where you need to work with the growth team to ensure that what they are promising isn't so far beyond the territory of what you're delivering to be something that is truly undeliverable. But often that comes with building the right relationships with the growth team and trying to work within the lines of that balance. And so they understand capability, they understand the pressures that go alongside that in terms of what the business is doing. The market is another major driver for this type of requirement on product. So all the time, and particularly depending on the market that you're in, you're going to have competitors that are coming up with brand new functionality, which then gets the attention of senior directors, maybe board members, or it's caught the eye of a particular strategic customer. And you have to filter that. You need to filter that through the lens of what is noise and what is actually something that you need to address. And you also need to consider the things which you today see as being USP are tomorrow potentially going to be those things which are table stakes. And you need to be able to adjust to that and be able to always think through what is the most important and ensure that really your strategy underpins everything that you do. Technology. Now, this is the one for a SaaS company at the moment which has had the greatest of all impacts. The ability to create software now has completely changed. So what used to take months can be delivered in days. But there's also the challenge that what can be delivered in months and days, does it necessarily have the same level of quality? So all of those factors need to be considered from product when it is making the decisions as to the things that it's able to do. And this is a great example with MCP. It just took it 16 months to go from 100,000 downloads to 97 million. React took 3 years to get maturity. MCP just 16 months, and 6 months for OpenAI, Google, and Microsoft to adopt it. Andrew Ng makes a great point, which is once anyone can build cheaply, the constraint is deciding what's worth building. And that's never more true, because the pressure to deliver new functionality has never been greater on product teams. And there is a danger of thinking that quantity is quality, and those two things are not necessarily correct bedfellows. So what does product actually control? So the ability to for discovery, for testing hypothesis and ensuring what we test matches what is actually reality based upon what our actual tests prove. Then prioritizing all of those different things based upon lots of different frameworks, lots of different approaches, lots of different stakeholder views, lots of different trying to get people bought in. Then delivery, and then measurement, and measuring actually did the bet that we made actually deliver what we wanted there to be. But what I want to convince you of is that in a scale-up environment, discovery and testing of hypotheses is largely and can largely be invisible to other stakeholders. It is something that they'll be far more interested in how you've chosen their particular initiative, or whether it's going to deliver on time, or from a reporting or financial perspective, has it enabled the ARR that was required. But from a product standpoint, a lack of discovery and then testing of hypotheses is what leads to making very, very bad decisions, letting down customers, or going in a direction which actually means that you've lost on a larger opportunity. But these are the two factors which can be largely compromised. And again, discovery is the stage which can be skipped without anyone noticing, because you will get chased from the sales team about when's the latest feature going to be available for them to be able to take to market, or to be able to demo. You'll be pushed by the operation team to ensure that the project is able to hit their deadlines because the feature lands ahead of training, in terms of the board, in terms of introducing functionality to hit ARR. But the reality is, to make the right decisions, discovery and testing is absolutely essential, and something that has to be done creatively in this type of environment. So what building on hope costs? So let's say in a world where we just do and fulfill the pressures that are often on the product team to ignore discovery, to ignore sort of testing of assumptions. What the implications of that? Well, already we know that 80% of features are rarely or never used. We know that huge amounts of money are spent by cloud companies on R&D expenditure, and you can just look at those proportions to look at the level of that expenditure, which is actually landing with the customer. And even with a company such as Microsoft, where it has incredible amounts of experimentation and discovery efforts, it still only has a feature success rate of 33%. So conviction and people talking loudly doesn't tend to outrun evidence, and that's borne out by the numbers. So the other problem that you have when it comes to discovery, beyond the fact that it's invisible, is the fact that the level of data that's available to you may be limited. So if you're in a B2C environment, you might be lucky enough to have 50 to 500 or millions of users to capture every single click that they make through the application, record that back, and understand that moving a button from the left-hand side to the screen of the right-hand side, or changing the help text, can have huge outcomes in terms of how users interact and perceive your product. You can run experiments much more easily by picking a large subsection of your audience, putting a new prototype feature in front of them, seeing what their feedback is, and then making a decision before you roll it out further. But that's not always the case in B2B, in my experience. You can often only have a few hundred accounts to work with. Usage can be sporadic, it can be seasonal, if the process that they have is based upon a particular date schedule, or it can be clustered around certain points of the day, or it can just be an infrequently used solution. You also can very much have a situation that the buyer of the solution isn't its user, and this is a really common paradigm, that you're in front of a prospect that wants to be sold on the output and the ROI, but isn't really that interested in the specifics of the software. And in that instance, you as a product professional need to find a way of understanding whether the product is going to land with the ultimate users, because if you don't, then the ROI that you're promised to the buy-in persona is not going to be delivered. You can't wait for evidence that will not come. So you cannot spend huge amounts of time trying to, I don't know, if you've got a couple of hundred customers, the reality is you will not have time to set up interviews with 50 customers and do follow-up sessions, or set up opportunities for them to be able to feeding questionnaires, or give you feedback on certain different scenarios for comparison. You will not have that time, and you will not have that customer buy-in to do that, because they also are busy and also have their own pressures. So the reality is that you will have a smaller audience to do that with. You will have lots of noises from various stakeholders that, again, back to the previous point, have strong convictions, but in reality isn't based upon the evidence that they have. You may have limited competitor information because they don't share that information publicly. You may have limited information in terms of how that feature will land until really after you start shipping it. So what is it that you can do? What is it that you can do to kind of get the confidence that you need to make the bets that you are required to make the business successful? So I've got a couple of examples of this. So one example is a savings management and attribution product for the public sector. Now we identified the persona and we implemented the solution, which was great. It enabled them to track the savings of all the procurement projects that they were doing, and it was able for them to collect the savings, either to report back to their internal boards, or if they were like more of a managed procurement service, to be able to report that back to their customers. And it worked really, really well for that. And so the signal was that this was something that we should spend time on, and we had willing customers looking to buy it. But the mistake that we had made was that it was too niche. The product was too niche. The market was too small. So whilst we had some very, very energetic and enthusiastic customers for the product, in actual fact there was never the market to sustain the need or sustain the growth that would require to justify the product. And in actual fact, as a sort of a double hit, what was the reality of it is that it actually took away from other opportunities, other bets that we could have made at that level of our or that stage of our growth, which could have given us far better growth, and instead we had something which actually distracted us and took away from that. And it was an example where, albeit there were limited signals, the signals that were there weren't listened to enough, and if they had been, would have told us not to make that bet. So this is a more recent example. And it's sort of goes into the heart of the example that I chose before, which was MCP, on the technological advancement and AI interoperability with the data that SaaS companies provide. Now, my current company is in a highly regulated sector. As such, the users are very understandably risk averse in what that they do, and when they adopt technology, it tends to be perhaps later than in other industries, because they need to go and fulfill more checks and balances based upon the risk and the importance of what they're doing. So what that told us, the signal there actually told us that this was a slow adopting industry, and actually when it came to AI or MCP, the likelihood would be it would be adopted later. But, and this is the but, there was something overriding here. We were observing a significant pain point which was understood by our CEO as a practitioner and other members of the business, but also through discovery, which told us that there was a significant amount of pain point where end users and would ask questions of our users to provide information from our product, and they wanted to have a way of making that available more quickly. And we saw that this way of doing that could be for them to ask the question via Claude, via Microsoft Copilot, via ChatGPT or whatever their chosen chat agent was. And even though we didn't have all of the information, we made the bet. And it turned out that actually, after we got into the development of that, we found out very, very soon after the signals started to come through that people were adopting this technology. They did start to have the expectation of being able to pull the data out. But by making the bet at the right time, by understanding the user's pain point, enabled us to be the first to market, but also more importantly, enabled us to serve a real challenge for the customer. So what I now do differently. So what do I do based upon interrogating the bet and when I don't have the data set? So these are a couple of the rules that I follow. Is the pain real or hypothetical? And this, we've all been there, where you've got somebody that has a particular challenge, but it is probably particular to them, or it might be particular to a particular, or it might be particular to an instance of something that's happened recently, but it doesn't really reflect something that happens on say a daily basis. We also have the inverse of that, where we have one customer that's telling us something, but actually we listen closely enough, that same pain point is reflected more widely on the market, and that hypothesis, even based on limited data, holds up if we look closely enough to test it. I think how reversible it is. I think this is a really, really key point, and even more important in the era of AI. Making decisions on things where we can introduce them quickly, potentially, but if they don't work based on limited information, we can stop the effort, redirect it, and then move on to something which is going to be more relevant, more in line with delivering our overall strategy. And also looking for the earliest leading indicator in terms of the signal which tells us that we've made the wrong bet, we've got it wrong. In the MCP case, it would have been, look, nobody wanting to use it, and they're not wanting to access data that way, and telling us that they wouldn't use it, and being prepared to listen to that early. Particularly when you have limited information, using that limited information when you do get those signals. So also protecting discovery when you can't afford it. And what I mean by that is sometimes there will always be pressure not to do discovery, but finding ways of doing it creatively under the pressures of everything else often proves the ability to be able to make better bets. So running discovery inside of the sales cycle, listening to what prospects are telling you, and that means joining sales on calls and reading transcripts, or using AI to read transcripts and starting to get the trends away from that. Using prototypes so that you can very, very quickly define a problem, put it in front of even a limited audience, and see whether the problem that you're solving is the real problem for the customer. And putting a confidence level on every bet. If you're not sure and you're really, really unsure, saying it really loudly. And the larger the bet, the more loudly you need to say it. So the job, honestly stated, product doesn't decide the promises, it makes them worth keeping. And that's what I've always throughout my career taken forward, that idea. Product can't be the one that sort of often dictate the strategies which determine actually the products that you deliver, but it makes sure that strategy is reflected in the best possible way within the products that we deliver. So it is also vitally important to protect the things that you can't. For the things that you can't affect, it's really important to protect your time to be able to, even where the organization isn't in, and to protect things such as the ability to do that discovery, to give yourself the most chance to make the bet that you want. And when the data runs out, interrogate the bet. So as a piece of homework for people to take away, can you consider your biggest live bet and run it through the 4 questions I've outlined today before Friday? And that's me. And at that point, I'm going to stop and pass over to questions.
Thank you so much, Stewart, for the great sharings. That was really refreshing take, especially your argument that product doesn't actually decide, and that our real job in a scale up is to make the founders and board strategy deliverable, measurable, and able to survive contact with the real world. I also love the reminder that when anyone can build cheaply, but the hard part becomes deciding what is actually worth building. So thanks again for this amazing session,
Thank
and
you.
thank you everyone for listening as well. We will now start the QA session. Please head to Slido again and submit any questions you have for Stuart. And while you draft your questions, I will share a few more slides about product people. But first, I want to give you a couple of seconds to scan the QR code or go to Slido. Okay. So let me briefly share a bit more about us. We are typically invited to join teams as interim product managers or product leaders, as product coaches or consultants to upskill product management or operational teams, and to accelerate transformation in the teams. Here are some clients we have worked with before. And here are some case statistics about our company. We have supported over 690 teams. We have 40 product leaders and product managers in our team, and we are proud to say that both of our team and leadership are around 60% female. Okay, and now I see we already have some questions. So, how do you maintain quality in a world where you can ship faster, Stewart?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's a question that I think has become even more prescient over the last 6 months with sort of the advent and improvements of Codex and Claude Code. I think it is to make sure that quality becomes more paramount in everything that you do. So ensuring that the assumptions that you make are more tested. I think it's ensuring that when you actually develop something, you ensure that you spend more time in preparation, not less, because if delivery is faster, you have more time to make sure that you get your brief correct. It's about, in my current role, I'm responsible for both the product and the QA function. So it's really important to ensure that the QA is really correctly resourced and correctly aligned and supported to ensure that whilst delivery is important, quality is paramount, that we aren't shipping products out there which just do not meet the bar in terms of what we're looking to do. And we measure outcomes, and we look at trends and make sure that those trends are not moving us to a position where we can see that our customers are saying, look, the software's more buggy or more difficult to navigate, or whatever those signals might be to indicate that quality has been compromised.
Well, that's a very well thought answer. Thanks, Stuart. And here goes another. How do you explain the importance of discovery to your sales teams?
I think in terms of examples, sometimes in terms of things that haven't worked, that perhaps for one reason or another were pushed through on the basis of belief, and actually it actually turned out we could have made a different decision. I think it's also showing them where that discovery can lead to revenue and revenue opportunities. So by quantifying that, actually all our customers are saying this, and if we build that, and that is very, very likely to provide a competitive advantage, or it is likely to provide an ability to maybe add an add-on or a new tier to the product that they hadn't considered, or open them up to a new vertical or new market entirely. So I think it's showing them those signals in terms of actually how we can also bring in more growth and sales success within the business through delivering on the right products.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And one more. Do you use a particular framework to make product decisions at scale?
Yes, I think there are a number of there's obviously a number of different. I tend to mix and match is the honest answer. So I tend to use the frameworks which best meet the particular challenge that we're working on. So as an example, we're big adopters of Agile framework and Scrum, but there are elements of Scrum in the current role where we don't do, say, sprint planning in the way that one might expect. So because our requirements tend to be quite well defined, and in some cases regulatory, the ability of the developers to kind of pick and choose is not always the same, and thus we have adapted that process. So I'm a big believer in terms of frameworks that take from them what works and don't follow them kind of religiously, because I think the danger with that is that you can sometimes be more focused on the framework and less focused on the actual outcome.
Okay. Thank you, Stewart. And we have another question. It is kind of personal about you. So, does Stewart have any advice on how to land junior associate product manager roles in the current job market?
Yeah, do you know what, with product, it's becoming more and more formalized, which I think is a great thing. I think educationally, we're starting to see. I had somebody that joined our team straight out of university, and found a fantastic educational route for her to be able to enhance and develop her skills. But I think it is, with product, it's one of those roles where, because it touches on so many different functions, I actually think having experience in other areas is really advantageous for product. So I can only speak from my experience. I've worked across R&D, I've worked across operations, I've worked across sales, and I think it's that common thread of product in terms of wanting to be able to solve problems, but also being cognizant of different domains and how product impacts those different domains is one of the best ways of developing. And for smaller companies, I think it is having a hands-on attitude. Just being able to, even if it's not within your job description, go ahead, do it, make yourself noticed, and that's really one of the ways in smaller companies for rapid progression.
Thank you, Stewart. We also have a sort of similar question as well. So it goes like, what makes a product manager a great product manager? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a couple of different things. I think it is the ability to listen. and to really listen and to take multiple different points of view and cut through that to actually find the thread of the problem. So problem solving, number one. So being able to have a passion for taking a user pain point and finding a better way to solve their problem, to make them more efficient, to make them more happy, whatever it happens to be, that ability to solve problems. And I think finally, the ability to articulate complexity in simple terms. It's something that I kind of constantly try and challenge myself with, and suggest other product professionals do as well. Can you describe what you do to somebody that has absolutely no experience in it? Or could you explain it to a 12-year-old? Because if you can't, then there's a good chance that you don't pass the bar in terms of that ability to really understand your product in a way that is approachable to others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a really, really valuable answer. Thank you so much. And yeah, this concludes the QA session. Thank you so much for the sharing all of these insights with us, Stewart, and also to our audience. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to stay connected, please scan the QR code to subscribe our newsletter for more inspiring product stories and insights. And if you enjoyed this talk, please join us again on August 4th when we will be talking about product management when your users are inside the company with Mihai. So, thank you for joining.